Hello, my name is Karen Gallagher and I'm here to talk to you about Trust and Foundations fundraising. I'll just talk you through what they are, a wee bit about Trust and Foundations fundraising, getting started, what strategy you should have, a case for support, what planning you need to do, what research you need to do, about the application process itself, and then about stewardship, which is the post-successful application process. So, by way of introduction, there's estimated to be about 10,000 trusts and foundations in the UK, distributing in the region of 2.7 billion annually. And that's just in the UK. Obviously, charities and community and voluntary sector organisations in Northern Ireland should be eligible and would potentially be eligible for applying for trusts and foundations in Ireland, across Europe and further afield. So the primary purpose for trusts and foundations is to administer grants to meet agreed charitable purposes. So trusts are generally set up by wealthy individuals or families so that they can ensure that their charitable interests continue in their lifetime or after their death. And more commonly, foundations are corporate entities that are established to give away a proportion of their profits each year, and one that I'm sure you're all familiar with would be the Halifax Foundation for Northern Ireland. So trusts and foundations, they generally follow their own direction and their own opinions on what they want to achieve by their grant giving and how it will benefit the causes they support. So by applying to a trust and foundation, it's about showing how your particular project can help them achieve the purpose of their grant giving. So it's almost nearly a reciprocal relationship. So they come in all shapes and sizes, I'm sure as you already know, and they give grants for a wide ranges of causes and reasons. Some trusts and foundations will be focused on charities and community and voluntary organisations in their local geographical areas. Some others will be focused on the likes of arts organisations, some given to health-related charities, and there will be some giving very specifically to various types of health-related charities, for example, dementia, and potentially then you would have trusts and foundations who give to specific community needs. Trusts and foundations also give to a wide range of work. So some give to capital, some don't. Some will give to revenue. Some will support startups, seed funding. Some, but not many, unfortunately, give to core costs, but the majority, in my experience, give to projects and programme work. So fundraising from trusts and foundations, this is getting into the meat a wee bit more. So really, trusts and foundations should be part of a fundraising strategy. Often I find in my day-to-day work out supporting charities on a consultancy basis that trusts and foundations would be the main source of income generation for lots of charities, and it's a bit risky to be putting all your eggs in one basket. So it really should be part of a fundraising strategy, and which could include community fundraising, events fundraising, corporate fundraising, individuals giving, legacy fundraising, and fundraising from major donors or high net worth individuals. Often I find as well that a lot of charities fundraise or attempt to get money from trusts and foundations basically by coming up with projects. They're chasing the money, so to speak, which I don't think is, well, they're often not very successful, because again, it is much more productive for you and much more encouraging for the trusts and foundations if you are strategic in your approach to them rather than chasing the money. So as well as making sure that as part of your strategy, you should also know how much you need to raise, and that will be split out by the various different income streams, including trusts and foundations. So you would set a specific target for trusts and foundations, as well as setting a target from individuals, high net worth individuals, for corporates, from legacies, etc. And then obviously internally you need to allocate resources to your trust and foundations income generation. Who's going to do it? Do you have somebody internally that can their role is specifically trust and foundations fundraiser? Often that is a bit of a luxury because not every organisation can afford somebody who would be specifically focused on trusts and foundations. But you might find that you have somebody, an internal fundraiser, who has a skill set that would be transferable. So as well as maybe doing corporate fundraising fundraising, the skills for corporate fundraising would lend themselves very well to trust and foundations income generation. Equally, you might have a fundraiser, you might be too small, so your program managers or your program officers are key individuals in your organisation that could be responsible for raising funds for the various projects. Indeed, I've known chief executives, I've known heads of fundraising, I have known operations directors, all to be involved in trust and foundations application processes. Or if you don't have anybody internally, lots of organisations use external fundraising consultants, and that's one thing. Here in Northern Ireland we have a great a number of really experienced and successful trust and foundations fundraisers that can come in and do ad hoc pieces of work on your behalf. So I think the main thing about trust and foundations fundraising is be prepared. Before you start, there should be a set of tools that I think would very much lend themselves to making life easier in the long run. So I would recommend that you have a case for support. You have a theory of change, which essentially shows a charity's path from needs to activities to outcomes to impact. It describes that what change you want to make and the steps involved in making that change happen. And obviously the outcomes would be part of your theory of change. So funders want to know, well, what difference are we going to make? Some funders will ask for a results framework, although that I haven't come across that an awful lot in my day-to-day, but I do know it is something that might be requested from time to time. So it's best to be prepared. Also, one thing I would be encouraging people to do is to think about full cost recovery. Again, not all funders will pay towards overheads, operational costs, management costs. But you know, it's increasingly becoming an issue for lots of charities, and we want to be able to show that, you know, there is a bit of work that goes into this project or program, particularly if it's a very specific application for a specific program area. Unfortunately, it just means then that you end up doing more for less money. So really, organisations should really think about that element before, as part of the planning process for trust and foundations income generation. And also a database. Now again, this could be anything from a very simple spreadsheet to a fully functioning Salesforce, for example, a customer relationship management system. Now it doesn't have to be anything as sophisticated as that, but I think it's really, really helpful to have some sort of receptacle for the details and the information of your trust and foundation. So you know who you could, your prospects, who you could potentially apply to, making sure you note the eligibility criteria, making sure you note their contact details, make sure you note the application deadline, any information that you also might have on how long the process actually takes from submission to being informed about whether you're successful or not. So it's just a really good, and again, you know, if you went under a bus tomorrow, then there's information there for somebody else in the organisation to pick up if you're on leave or often sick or whatever. So I think that these are sort of key essentials that you need to have in place before you start on a trust and foundation programming. So, case for support, what is it? Well, essentially it is a clear and well-defined set of needs. A concise and articulate account of the vision and the programme that requires support. It should appeal to the head and the heart. It should be urgent and emotive, but also underpinned with facts and figures. But essentially it should ask the four fundamental questions. Why do we need the money? Why do we need it now? What difference will it make? And why you can trust us to spend it wisely. So the case for support is used for, it's basically your sourced document for all the materials produced to support your fundraising, from full-scale proposals to the elevator pitch. It's basically the foundation of all of your income generation. It's a tool for bringing on your board and your leadership. It is a way of making sure that everyone involved is singing from the same hymn sheet. It does take time and effort to put together, and it's worth doing. It's definitely worth putting the time and investment into getting this right. I have a small client that I'm working with. I changed draft 3 to draft 4 just this week because I had some figures to update in it. It's never been fully signed off, but I use it for every application that I make on their behalf, and basically I've had pretty good success rate for that particular client. So yeah, it's an organic an organic piece of kit that I think every organisation should have that's about to embark on any type of income generation, but particularly for trusts and foundations. So the case for support should include, just in a nutshell here, should be the need, the solution, the cost, the urgency, the donor benefits, the donor context, the people responsible, the budgets, resources, and the budgets and resources necessary and available. So that's a very sort of like a short and snappy template that most organisations could take away and populate the information to help start develop the case for support. So planning, it's all about planning. Preparation is key. So the more prepared that you are, the quicker it will be to write a good funding application. Writing an application as a means of working out what you're doing or want to be doing or going to be doing is a recipe for a disaster. That goes back to the point earlier about chasing the money. So thinking, planning, discussing and budgeting, and then rethinking, replanning, rebudgeting. It takes time, but it's time well spent. And I suppose that goes back to the point about giving yourself plenty of time to get the application done, and rather than doing it a week before the deadline, because that's a recipe for disaster. So research. Obviously going back to help building your prospect list, research funders that support your cause, your project, your program or your initiative. It's not rocket science. Google is the best place to start, because it might take a bit of refining that Google search, but it will definitely throw up some opportunities. NICFID's grant tracker, it's a yearly subscription of about £145. In my opinion, it's money well spent. It is an up-to-date list that's updated like regularly by the team at NICFID, so it is a really good source. And a free resource that I've been using quite a lot lately is the Charity Excellence. It's a portal really for excellence in lots of charitable activity, but they have a Trust and Foundations Funder database as well. You can access the Charity Excellence Hub at charityexcellence.co.uk. Obviously, the research will then lead you into finding out what the funders are interested in and the scale of support that you might expect. So basically what you should be asking for. And again, one of the main things is, we know that there might be, you might know from this research that there's grants available for up to 10,000. Average grants are maybe 6,000. So I think it's about you being savvy enough to sort of go, right, well, okay, my project, I'll put in for 6,000 rather than the 10,000, because you might have more chance of getting it. And also, you should use this research to help you identify any connections between you and the funder. Is there any personal contacts? Is there any personal contacts with other people in your organisation? Has there been any previous approaches done to this particular funder? Has there ever been any meetings? So it's good to do all your research before you start. So the other thing that you could find out from all of these various sources, obviously the likes of NICFID's Grant Tracker and the Charity Excellence website, they will give you a list of potential organisations to approach, and then obviously my recommendation would be going to their own websites. There'll be top line information in the likes of Grant Finder, but you need to go into the funder's website to get the detail. And the information you'd expect to find would be the total grants budget. Obviously, a bit more about previously funded projects. Speak to previously funded organisations. Just this morning, I was out talking to a potential client about the Dormant Accounts Fund. So it was just easy to go into the lottery website and look at all of the organisations that have been successful in dormant accounts. And they give you a brief summary of what the project is about and how much they achieved. So that to me is totally invaluable. Speak to these previously funded organisations. Again, they'll have little insights and snippets of information that they might be happy to share with you in terms of how they managed to get to be successful. Review the annual reports and accounts. Make sure that you know about the best time to apply. being aware of the trustees meetings, because it's the trustees from these trusts and foundations that will be ultimately making the decision. Some trustees meet maybe 4 times a year, so funding rounds are normally coincide with these meetings. Find out a bit more about what they're looking for and also how the applications can be assessed. All of this, again, background information will really help beef out your own application and hopefully support success. So now moving on to what a fundable project should look like. It should be specific. So you should be able to identify an item of expenditure or a piece of equipment or a specific stage of a project. It needs to be important to the organisation and the impact needs to be clear. It needs to be effective and it should have clear and positive outcomes. It should be realistic and the work should be achievable, and it is always helpful to use previous examples to demonstrate how you have achieved and what you've achieved in the past. It should be good value. It should demonstrate a good use of the donor's money. It should be topical. Current issues or concerns. We all know what it was like during COVID and post-COVID and how funders had to pivot. There's that word that we've all used during COVID, how funders had to pivot to change how they supported organisations during and post-COVID. Relevant, obviously the same thing, so it needs to be relevant to the funder and their funding concerns. But you have to be mindful that it shouldn't really be too large or too small for a donor to support. So it's about being realistic as well. It's about being smart. So it goes back to the strategy again, making sure that you're smart about your trusts and foundations funding. So applications basics, your selling points. Why is your work important and worth supporting? Grant makers receive a huge number of applications. You see it on websites already before you even start. Warning, almost nearly putting a warning sign on their website. We've been oversubscribed for applications, so take heed of that. But your application should define what makes you different. It should include facts and figures about your work, and they need to demonstrate the importance of your cause, the extent of the need, the value of your work, and your success methods. So always be sort of thinking about the monitoring and evaluation in advance of completing an application. Obviously, the key thing is the credibility of your organisation. So any endorsements or statements from other people increases confidence in your abilities. Making sure that you have a well-defined project plan and a budget. Be clear about what you intend to do, when you intend to do it, and what the benefits will be. And any backup literature, brochures, annual reports, case studies, video testimonials, any sort of feedback that you've had from previous beneficiaries or service users are all really helpful and important when making a new application. So application do's, read the guidelines, ensure you're eligible. Lots of trusts and foundations have a quick and easy eligibility questionnaire on the front page of their website. So, making sure that you do all of these checks before you embark on an application process. Make sure that you're drafting your application form. Again, this is very basic stuff, but draft a lot of trusts and foundations are now insisting that you use online application forms, which are great, and it just makes the whole process a lot easier. But my recommendation would be do it in a Word document in the first instance, so that basically you can hone it and refine it. You can share it with your colleagues. You can keep an eye on the word count. So that certainly has worked for me in the past. Making sure that you include all the supporting information that they've requested. Again, a lot of the online applications won't let you submit the application unless they can see that you have uploaded the relevant documentation, but making sure that you have signed copies of the latest version of your accounts. And I suppose it really depends on what process you are in the account cycle, to making sure that is it this year's or last year's, making sure you have signatories of the relevant senior people in the organisation, so that or access to them, because people go on holidays, people go on sick, so make sure that you have everything, all your ducks in a row, to ensure a successful submission process. Attach a covering letter or summarise the case for support. Again, That could be very simple for some organisations, but then again, you mightn't be allowed to attach that with some of these online applications. But again, it'll be a case-by-case basis. Make sure that your contact details are correct, as I mentioned before, making sure you've all your signatories available. Include any references if requested. If you are required to post an application, send it second class, because then that demonstrates that you're being efficient as a charity and you are providing value for money and you're not wasteful. Another good thing is to get a critical friend to review. And this could be somebody from completely outside your sector. It could be a family member. It could be a friend who doesn't know very much about who you are, what you do in your day job. But sometimes it's just good to have somebody to review to make sure that it's plain English and that they understand what you're doing. And also make sure that your financial information is accurate. If you are using spreadsheets, making sure that all of your calculations add up. Application don't include a lot of superfluous information that's not required. Don't use jargon. As a sector, we love our acronyms. We all have our own specific way of describing pieces of work and people and our own terminology for our specific areas of work. Keep it simple. Don't make bland sweeping statements. Give accurate figures and the source of these figures. Don't use superlatives that you cannot prove, for example, being, oh, we're absolutely unique, because chances are you're not. Don't assume that they have previous knowledge of your organisation. Don't use words or concepts that could be controversial or inflammatory. And finally, don't use redundant information stating that you're a charity or other information that will be on your stationery or you'll have probably completed at some other point in the application process where you're requested to put in your charity number and your company number, etc. So according to funders, successful applications are eligible. They're well planned and clearly evidenced. They're presented clearly and concisely. They demonstrate that the criteria is met. They're made with monitoring and evaluation in place. They have a clear budget and evidence of robust financial management. They're submitted on time. They don't plead poverty. They include all the requested enclosures, and they're within the parameters of the grant. So don't ask for too much. In fact, you're probably best to ask for less and maybe 10 to 15% less. And also, for projects based in Northern Ireland, I hear at least once or twice a year how funders are surprised that they're not getting applications from Northern Ireland. Now, I would question that, because I would imagine there's lots of organisations applying to trusts and foundations outside of Northern Ireland and they're not successful because maybe they didn't employ the very basics to making sure that it's the best that it can be. Wrapping up now, so once you've had your successful application and you get the letter through or the email through to say you've been successful and you've got what you asked for, well, basically immediately you need to send a thank you, and that can be a phone call to confirm receipt and to thank them for their support. If they email you, probably best to email them back, but then send a more formal thank you letter. And then throughout the duration of the project, yes, they will have reporting requirements which you will have to meet, but it's about keeping in touch. It's basically informal progress reports, even if they're not requested, because this demonstrates how you're spending their money, and it also gives you an opportunity to indicate any expansion plans. It also is an opportunity to highlight any changes, because life moves on. Not everything stays the same, and I think we obviously have had 2 years of COVID for that. So what about all of those grants that were given to organisations that they had to stop everything on the 20th of March 2020? So funders had to, again, there's that word again, pivot, had to pivot and basically respond to the new requirements that many charities that many charities had as a result of COVID, and most funders, in my experience, were very, very flexible and very open and very receptive to those conversations, because the money was already out there, the work was already being done, so they just wanted to see the projects finished in the best way possible, accommodating the various restrictions that we had at that time. So keeping in touch, follow-up telephone call to test reaction to the report once you sent it through as well. It's about, to me, people, fundraising is about people giving to people, and it's about a relationship building. And this is just, you just treat a trust and foundation donor in the same way as you would treat any other donor to your organisation. Once you submit your report to the funder, it would also be a good idea to maybe follow up with a telephone call just to make sure that they're happy with the report and to test their reaction to it. Other things you could offer as part of a stewardship journey would be to ask the funder to come and visit the charity, speak to staff, or to attend an event. Alternatively, you could send them a link to a video of the project that they've supported. You could use that contact to basically give them an idea of what other projects and activities that are happening and updating them on key news related to their support. You could also use this opportunity to seek opportunities to reapply during the next funding cycle. Now again, there's no trust and foundation, no two trusts and foundations are the same. Often you can't apply for maybe 3 years after the end of the grant time frame, but equally you could have maybe 2 or 3 grants running with particular funders concurrently. So no, as I say, no two will be the same, but making sure that you're aware of all of that. And then obviously when you do get the opportunity to reapply, your application will acknowledge the feedback from the previous one, and obviously any feedback that you got through the stewardship journey as well. So that is it in a nutshell. Hopefully you found that helpful. Thank you and good luck.